All right, welcome to our webinar tonight. We are going to talk about what we need to be looking out for in 2021. So I am going to be showing some slides tonight. If you do have questions or you need more information, just like we have in the past, go ahead and type up a chat. And if I don't answer or don't cover it, we may have some time at the very end to answer your question. Or your question may be answered by another Best Choice Realty broker. So we are going to try to mute the lines just so I have enough time to get through the content tonight. But definitely feel free to chat in the chat window if you have some questions or you have feedback. We'll end right at 6 o'clock. So if you do have to leave and you need to step out, you're welcome to do so. We are recording tonight. All right, let's go to the next slide. So just so you guys are familiar with the staff, several of you, just a quick reminder, make sure you do the survey. We've sent the survey out to everyone. If you don't know what I'm talking about, every year Best Choice Realty does a survey. It's a very simple survey this year. I think only 7 questions. And one of the things that came up on the survey is they want to know who the faces are behind the organization. It's not just me. As many of you have been able to interact with some of the staff, this is the staff that we have currently working in the various offices that are open on an appointment basis at this time. But if you are wanting to know what each one of the operations manager or branch manager or marketing design manager, what are the typical questions? One of the things we'll be sending out in today's session or posting on YouTube is the who do I ask what for? Kind of gives more information about who handles what in the organization, which might be helpful for some of you that are newer to the organization or just a refresh after COVID to know who does what. So again, we all had our photo refreshed, so everybody has new photos, and I think it showcases us very well. Just the personalities really come through. And so just a reminder, you might want to think about doing your new photo if it's been a few years. For me, I think it's four years since I had my new headshot done. So it's about time. Let's go to the next slide. So 2021 is going to be an interesting year. We've already planned the budget for Best Choice Realty, and I do have some good numbers that I can share with you. First off, the business and occupation tax, the B&O, is going to stay the same. It is still scheduled to be the 1.5% of the gross commission that has to be paid to Washington State. Some of you may get letters in the mail asking for B&O to be paid. We do handle, for your real estate portion, the business and occupation tax. If you owe tax for some other business venture or something else that you do out of your home office, that's on you. But as far as the real estate portion is concerned, it is only 1.5%. The labor and industries service charge that we charge every month for those of you who are working either part-time or full-time. The good news, I just found out 2 weeks ago that the labor and industries rate that we base our fee on is going to stay the same. So because of COVID, because of all the things going on in our state, labor and industries decided to keep that rate the same for all of the businesses. So good news for all of you. So our rate is very, very low. It's probably one of the lowest out there. The next thing I want to talk about is E&O policies for 2021. Now, if you were in the business like I am right now of shopping at the end of the year for a new insurance policy, just like you shop for car insurance maybe every year or every other year, if you're a brokerage owner, you actually have to shop for an E&O policy every year, and you've got to disclose like how many claims you've had, how many transactions are dual agency, how many are foreclosures, how many are short sales. It's a very, very thick package of an intake that we have to supply to our insurance carrier that then shops to try to find the best rate. I guess the best thing I could tell you guys is that for 2020, because of the industry going through this shuffle, and there's a lot of transactions that are happening and a lot of people going through distress, and with COVID, the insurance, it's like my insurance carrier, he said it's like a bomb dropped off in the E&O policy. So I'm like, oh gosh, get ready for the worst. We shopped it. The deductible was, I think it was gonna be a $10,000 deductible. And I was like, this is crazy that it can go from a deductible of $2,500 per incident to $10,000. But that's what he was quoting me up until last week when we got our E&O policy affirmed, and we found a carrier that would be willing to give Best Choice Realty our same low rates. And so that we can keep your E&O fee very low. So our coverage did get adjusted. So we are going to cover a few things with you today, because for 2021, our liability insurance, the professional liability, which is probably the most important thing to have at $1 million, is still going to stay intact. But because our deductible went down back to the $2,500 that we were accustomed to, we do have to make some adjustments on how we handle fair housing, lockbox, showing properties. Those went down from being $1 million policy to $500,000 policy per claim. Also the mold, the $500,000 mold, that one gives me a little bit of pause. And Jerry Kay and I spoke about how we handle mold disclosure. And some of you need to do a better job at at disclosing with your clients. Luckily, we have not had any incidents, but with this $500,000, some of these mold, where mold becomes like the whole house needs to be remediated, it can be very costly. And then when you get attorneys involved, it can be very, very expensive to deal with, but not too concerned. I have the policy set up and everything looks good. Owned property exclusion with the carve back for construction is a $250,000. If you have questions about your own personal properties or in construction or that kind of thing, let me know. But luckily we kept our rate. So it's still going to be the $35 per transaction. And again, the minimum deductible, $2,500 with the $1 million coverage on the professional liability. The insurance carrier, the name, it's, I think, Great American, but they've branded with a different name. So I have to give you the copy of it. It usually is bound by the end of the year, and then it's available. If you guys need it for some of the things or projects you're working on, you're happy to reach out to me separately, and I'll be happy to share the bound policy. Major changes to the forms are on the horizon for 2021. I was on a call with Justin Hagg, the general counsel for the Northwest MLS, just last week, and they're planning on training the designated brokers and managing brokers early in this kind of probably end of Q1, so like March timeframe, because there are significant changes they're making to the finance contingency, the 35 inspection contingency, and the escalation addendum. They are getting major overhauls. And I would anticipate significant, so much where they're having to train the brokers and the managing brokers on those changes before they train the rest of you. So I'll have more information, and as I get it, I'll be sure to pass it along, but just realize there will be some forms classes that you'll probably need to take in the summertime of 2021. And certainly as I get the changes, I'll be sure to train you guys on them as well. So the disclosure receipt, for those of you who are maybe new or have not taken our contract negotiation class, given the fact that we have an E&O where it's not as comprehensive, it went down from being $1 million to 500,000. I would be certain, if I was a real estate broker writing up a deal or conducting business with either a buyer or a seller, that not only did I just give the Law of Real Estate Agency pamphlet, a lot of you are doing a good job, so thank you for doing that. Law of Agency has never been a challenge at Best Choice because we do a good job in training you on that. But many of you have come from other brokerages where the mold and moisture pamphlet or the lead-based paint pamphlet has not been common practice, or the wire fraud alert for that matter. And I would encourage you, especially with our E&O, backed down a little bit on that we do a better job at making sure our clients, both buyer and seller, have a copy of the mold and moisture pamphlet, and that you have proof of delivery, whether it be in this format of using the receipt, the Form 1 that BCR puts together, or whether you have some sort of read receipt or proof by email that you have indeed sent the mold and moisture pamphlet and you've kept a record of that. We are going to be helping you in knowing when these disclosures are done, and maybe having Jerry Kay ask you for them. So please be nice to her and don't be too hard when she asks for these things, because again, we're all trying to prevent and from E&O claims from taking effect, using the deductible and having to raise our rates for everyone. So keeping our rates low, we will be asking for disclosure. So where does Best Choice Realty rank year to date? Great news, you guys. We're number 8 now. So we are doing a fantastic job. This is since the start of January till basically today. We are ranked at number 8. And this is for any if you searched anywhere in the where the MLS services, this is our ranking. And I guess you could combine brands, and Keller Williams looks pretty strong with total units, but we did a pretty good job. We're at 1571 units year to date and expected to close probably a couple hundred more between now and the end of the year. So we're looking really good. Appreciate all your help. And again, this ranking report you can easily download from the MLS. And they do have instructions on their homepage. If you are curious to know what your individual ranking is, you can figure that out as well. So Matt Garner went ahead and did a class recently. You guys could have attended it, but I'll give you the just the high points that I think is very important to consider. This graph is very much a graph about supply in general and housing inventory and the interest rates at generational lows. We have never seen inventory lower than it has ever been. And he's Matt Garner is expecting it to go even lower. So get ready for even lower supply. And still the interest rates remaining low. I still think into next year, we're going to see them low. Competition will increase. So more people will become aware of what's going on in the marketplace. And so the sales prices are really testing the affordability levels in the main areas that we service, King, Pierce, and Snohomish. The move to the burbs, he said, is real, but not everywhere. So we're seeing some increases in Kitsap, for example. So there is moving to the burbs because they can, maybe telecommute, work in Seattle, but yet live in Kitsap, for example. But that's not happening everywhere. So, to keep that in mind, there is the thought from other designated brokers and other economists or market experts, you would say, that would expect that things could change once we get the vaccine, where people are they're over the Zoom meetings, they're kind of over working from their home office. And there is the position that others could take where there could be the move back to the cities, helping our condo market and also helping some of the commercial market when we do get the vaccine that gets widely distributed. So again, move to the burbs is a real thing right now, but it's not everywhere. And there is the other side of the equation, which would be interesting to see what happens next year. Let's go to the next slide. So with that change, the lack of inventory, I'm hearing a lot of you say, Rochelle, do you have an example of, I have a buyer? Do we have a letter that you can basically template or use and get out to people who are maybe considering selling to an identified buyer? They don't necessarily want to put their home on the market, but they are wanting to maybe sell to an identified buyer. And we do have a good seller letter that I've used. We've tweaked it over the years. You can certainly take pieces out of it if you like the way it sounds. But the big thing, if you're going to blanket, say, a neighborhood with a buyer letter like this, be sure you have in the asterisk somewhere small, it says, if your property is currently listed with a real estate broker, please disregard this notice. That is a requirement if you're sending out a mail piece and you don't know if the home is listed on the market. You could be seen as soliciting that seller, and then you could get a fine. So be sure to use the asterisk, and then you could change up whatever you need to in the body of the letter or the email. And then get this out to people. If there's a specific neighborhood where there's lack of inventory and you have a buyer who's pre-approved, who's maybe lost out on a few different homes, you may want to get with your title rep and send this to some predetermined addresses and see what you get. I have received opportunities this way. Back in 2017 in Sammamish, in Kirkland, in Bellevue, I was able to get 3 sales put together just by using this buyer letter example. So I know it works. Again, we used it in Pierce County. This one was the Pierce County one we sent out, I think, a year or 2 ago. So I know that this type of flavor is still very prominent and does get responses from people. Okay, realtor.com. And again, when they say Seattle market, I think they're encompassing a little bit more than just the Seattle, I would say the Seattle metropolitan area. But Seattle did make the list for realtor.com with the top 10 housing markets to look out for 2021. If you want the article, you can go to realtor.com. It did come up on December 7th, so it's fairly recent when they made the top 10. But I think this is kind of a cool thing that we are seeing in our area where we service, where the median home price relative to the other top 10 housing areas is actually quite reasonable compared to California and some other areas of the country. The anticipated home price change is very healthy, 9.7%. And we still have a robust economy in the sense that we have Microsoft, Costco, Starbucks, and other types that have helped our market become in the top 10. So very strong local economy, and then also just relative to the others that are on the list, a relative median home price that would make sense for business professionals. Also, just want to remind you, if you are interested in getting leads from realtor.com, we do have an account it was with OpCity, but OpCity was recently acquired by realtor.com. And so we do have a portal or a backend system where you could participate. When you participate with realtor.com, you agree to pay them a 35% referral fee if that and when that lead closes. But we have had a few of our brokers had great success with OpCity, which is now realtor.com leads, and they have built 50% of their business has coming from that source. So if you are struggling with ways to maybe, provide income for your family or look at your business plan and maybe differentiate your leads, you might want to consider letting me know or let Candace know, and we'll be happy to add you to that list. The other news is Zillow is now a brokerage. So they have talked about, test piloting a few marketplaces, but effective only a few weeks ago, they are now a brokerage on the Northwest MLS. And with that comes some changes. And if you start to hear about some things locally that's going on, again, we want to be on the front end of that. There's a website article that I found today, which was easy. Just Zillow launches brokerage to boost iBuying. The reason for them going to the Northwest MLS was so that they can purchase or they can iBuy. My guess is, though, they're actually looking at a bigger play and looking at a way to expand their reach. They had already talked with me before the launch of becoming a Northwest MLS member, of partnering in the same way that Redfin partners with us. So my guess is come 2021, you start to see lead generation done where not only may you pay maybe an advertising fee, but you also might be paying, they'll give you the cream of the crop, if you will, if you're willing to pay them a referral fee. I would expect that's on the horizon. More importantly, you guys have got to learn how to combat what is called iBuying. And we will talk about this in future calls next year, but I want to whet your appetite for the iBuying process because we already have tools at our disposal and many of you don't know how to use them. Number one, we already have a really good buyer agency agreement. So if you are wanting to work with, say, a seller and a buyer, and they're thinking about selling their home and buying another one, you may want to have a conversation and use the buyer agency agreement as a way to explain your worth, explain your value, explain how you earn commission. In my opinion, I think commission is going to be the topic or the word of the year for next year on how you earn your commission and what is commission as opposed to maybe a service fee. I think commission is going to kind of get broken apart, and we might see some of these other companies that have iBuyer programs misinform consumers in kind of just taking your commission but calling it something else. And you need to be prepared for that. And you need to be able to properly execute a buyer agency agreement if you need to make sure that the buyer is aligned with you. And then the other thing you need to be aware of is how to have a conversation with the potential seller about the ability to represent them in an off-market situation or to represent them in a regular retail situation where you're actually putting some information on the multiple listing service. So there are 3 companies that offer this tool. Chicago Title offers this tool. Fidelity offers this tool. And Tycor offers this tool. So Brian Bentley, Lisa Schultz, or Deanna Powell would be the three of these vendor resources that I would reach out to if you do not have this on your phone. Get the mobile app because it will save you a time and money. You may have the opportunity to represent somebody. It's what they call this Tycor Agent One, Fidelity Agent One, or Chicago Agent. There is a tool that we use for net sheets, but they have a resource that you can use for the calculator. So I want to show you on the desktop application how I use the Tycor Agent One. Again, the Chicago or the Fidelity will look very similar, but many of you just didn't know that you had this tool available to you. And we're going to use an example that is familiar that we've used in past webinars. But if you go to their calculator, you can see the calculator at the top. So you log in. I'm in Pierce County. I do pay for the, it's not very much, it's I think $12 or $13 a year. I do pay for their advanced settings. It gives me the ability to post something on my social media, and it does allow me to get their rates into the various counties. So I like that, and I do endorse that annual fee that they have to charge you because of they're backed by the insurance commissioner, and this is something of value. They do have to charge you for it. But even the free version is pretty good. I believe the free version does have the calculator as well, but you click on calculator, and then they have iBuyer comparison or iBuyer multiple offers. We're going to use the iBuyer comparison because we're going to pretend today that Shannon is considering, we've seen her house, we saw that she got multiple offers, we know the story or the backstory with that particular case study. But let's just say I was talking with Shannon and we were basically going to put her home on the market. And she said, Rochelle, what about that easy buyer? They said that they would buy the home from me. Kind of as an investor, it's kind of a strategy that a lot of these iBuyer companies will offer. Zillow will probably start doing this next year. You have a calculator that can speak to this and get ahead of it before that iBuyer or before that company tries to, in essence, take that listing from you or take that opportunity from that seller and in fact, take their commission. I'll show you how it works. So I asked Shannon, what is her loan balance? And she types in her loan balance, or I can do it on my app. There we go. So that's her loan balance on her house out in Spanaway. And I asked her what her current interest rate. She just refied, so that's interesting. And then she put in her property taxes, and then we click next. And then it says the iBuyer comparison. So selling with the realtor, again, you're a real estate broker. We're going to say that we comped it out at $350. Again, we might be able to get more, but we're going to be conservative with our numbers. And we only are going to charge a 5%. So we're getting a deal, 0.5% because the low inventory. We can save that seller a 0.5% with the buyer's agent commission. And we're going to go ahead and match that with our listing fee. Again, you do what you want. Some of you may want to charge 4%. Some of you might want to charge whatever you want to charge. Again, you work in a flat fee brokerage model. So you have the ability to scale your business in such a way by utilizing these calculators. No repairs are needed. We got a closing date estimate. And then if you scroll down, most of these iBuyers, when they offer a price that's 90% of the market value. So they kind of have a calculation that they come up with. And when they actually go to escrow, they don't offer the full market value. Even if they did, you'll see how the service fees work and how the repairs work and how you compare. So it estimates kind of what we're experiencing in Arizona and some of these other places. And then we compare. So if you have a question, you can click the question mark. The service fee, like I told you earlier, it's kind of like commission, but they call it some different name. So you got to be careful and advise your clients that, commission, service fees, it could all mean the same type of thing. And repairs, they will sometimes perform an in-house inspection, and they may require some non-negotiable credit. So what they start out with and offering you might be different than what they actually transact. So we put the closing date because most of these offers are cash. Zillow has a lot of money, and so they can close quick, but you can play with those closing dates and you can compare side by side. I like how this compares side by side the difference between the iBuyer program and the difference of what being represented, like me actually taking Shannon's listing. And at the end of the day, we know from opening her home to the wide market and all the cooperative real estate brokers in the area, what we're seeing is that she will get a net gain of $31,675. In essence, she actually got more than that because we bid the property, I think, up to $380. So in essence, she got even more because we had great negotiation and great market knowledge to be able to combat any iBuyer that was coming in to the mix. So it would benefit your seller if they are even thinking about selling to an investor or selling to an identified buyer or selling to an iBuyer. If they bring up some of those things, you may want to consider showing them that calculator and making sure that we're dealing with true numbers. We're not getting persuaded to go with something that is not in their best interest. As you can see, the open market or iBuyer, there are some additional PDFs or some things that the title companies have provided. The reason they provided this in their portals is because Ticor, Fidelity, and Chicago also are in areas or marketplaces like Phoenix, where Zillow has been in Phoenix since 2017 as an iBuyer. So they're a bit more familiar with how to speak to it than probably all of you. So again, more to come on this, but I wanted you to be aware that those reps have that resource. And I would highly recommend the takeaway today. If you don't have that, go on there and play around with that iBuyer tool. Be familiar with speaking to it. Put yourself into a role play situation with maybe somebody else so that you're not just going to be practicing when you're actually going on listing appointments for real. You really need to be very good at doing net sheets and doing those calculations on the fly. Gone are the days of where you just send them a net sheet and you don't have that conversation or that challenge. You know, Zillow and Redfin are going to go ahead and push online valuations and your price is between this price and that price, and we have an iBuyer program where we will buy your home for you. If you want to combat that and make sure your clients are getting full market value and getting the services that they deserve, you need to be familiar with this kind of stuff. So that's what I had. If you guys want the takeaways, we have some beautiful sheets that I can send you. Wait probably a couple days. We record and then we also provide the materials. And again, the materials would consist of the vendor sheet. So it has the name, phone number, and email address of all of our sales representatives in the area. It gets updated for 2021. I don't anticipate any changes from that. And all of those vendors have been vetted. I personally have spoken with all of them, with their various CEOs or with their sales managers to make sure that we are getting the best service possible for all of you at those various companies. So if you have questions or concerns about any of the companies that are on that vendor sheet, be sure and reach out. This is the time to really make sure that your partners understand your business and can support you when things are pretty hectic. Like I know Chicago is really hectic right now because it's end of year and the volume is so intense. But to make sure that all of your closers and your title officers are working in conjunction with some of the things you're working on. So that's what I have for tonight. And I hit 6 o'clock straight up on my watch. So I do have a couple minutes for some questions. Shannon, if there was anything that anybody had, I'd be happy to answer a question or two. And I'm excited about what's on the horizon. We are doing our own lead program too. So that is some of the calls for early next year will be in utilizing our own website and lead generating with the tools that we offer at Best Choice. So more to come on that. But hopefully this was helpful. We'll talk to you guys next week.